Hello, everybody, and welcome to Atheist Sunday School, your one-stop shop for everything Atheist Sunday and School. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Introducing our guests. We'll get it one day.
Yeah.
We'll get it. Yeah. We got the always beautiful, the always sexy, the always intelligent Landon Noll, and we also have Chris Hansen with us.
Oh, yes.
From your friendly secular astronomer, how are you doing, folks?
We're doing good.
Day?
Yeah, we're doing well.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're doing.
Yeah.
How are you doing, audience? Tell
How
us.
are you? We care about you.
Yep.
You know, people have been saying, okay, boomer, but they have never been saying, are you okay, boomer?
That was a good one.
Thank you. I
don't
stole
know
it from a meme.
Is our audience a bunch of boomers?
There's a good amount of them.
Oh, really?
Well, no, actually, no, I don't think so. Not that many.
No, are they Zoomers?
Yes?
Huh? So we have Zoomers and silent generation people.
I don't think anyone from the silent generation is watching us.
I'm technically in what they call the baby boomer generation, so...
Yeah.
Landon says that with shame. Yeah, I'm a baby boomer.
Yeah.
I know, but because I don't believe in any of that generation blah stuff. So,
Well,
what do you?
I think we can get started with the 100-point show.
Yep.
All right, so I got a question for you guys. At Kuntalet Adrud, excavations revealed two localized manifestations of Yahweh. One was Yahweh of Samaria. What was the other one?
Yahweh of Babylon.
No. Next?
Yahweh of Taman.
Yes, Chris is correct.
Wow. Well, 100.
What Chris said.
For you, I guess Landon doesn't get a guess.
No, he said whatever Chris said. So
Oh.
obviously he also gets the points
Oh yeah.
because that would be correct.
Obviously.
All right, what is your 100-point show question?
Okay, I have a 100-point show question for you. What is the first Gigantamax Pokemon guaranteed to be appearing in Pokemon Sword and Shield after release?
I'm sorry, Gigantamax?
Yes, it's their new gimmick where certain Pokemon can become giant.
Is it Pikachu?
No.
Damn.
Anybody else?
Dickamon Gigantamon.
No, this isn't Digimon.
No.
No.
Well, you already guessed the only name. Lawrence already guessed the only name of a Pokemon that I know. So, Pikachu.
No.
No,
No.
sorry.
It is Butterfree.
Biggest.
Butterfree?
Biggest.
Really?
Biggest.
That sounds like a weird Pokemon to be the first giant one.
Yeah, Butterfree's pretty lame, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's
Butterfree.
it.
I would have done something like hilarious, like Klefki, a giant pair of keys. Congratulations. Because that's what Pokemon has resorted to. All right, so who wants to go next with the 100-point show question? Landon or Chris? It's up to you guys. I don't care.
Well, if Chris number one is not ready, I have a question. There was a study done in the 1980s of surnames in China, and it was determined that the top 100 surnames in China account for what percentage of the Chinese population? There's 100 points, so see, so it has to do with 100, but the answer is not necessarily 100.
The answer is an even or
So,
an odd.
and this is the basic, and certainly it's open to the.
I'm gonna
as
say
well. The top
100%.
100 names in China account for what percentage of the Chinese population?
I'm gonna say 100%.
I'm going to say 83%.
Christopher number one is muted.
Let's say 90%.
I would say 89%.
The correct answer is 85.
Ooh.
I was
So,
close.
but I think you get at least you should get at least a point for being closest.
Yeah, I'll take the point.
Damn, it should have been 100.
Ooh.
All right.
Okay, mine. So, what are the Phoenician deities we know of that are called Father?
That are called Father. I'm going to go with Baal, and that's the only one I remember.
I'm gonna go with Ball and I don't know, L. Is that a Phoenician?
I'll go with Baal.
Okay. Well, you guys got Baal. There's also Shalom. There is Khalil, Milku, and Cheyenne.
Milku. What is Milku the god of?
He looks like he was possibly a chthonic deity, but we're not really sure. All we know is that he's attested in the Amarna letters. He's attested at Ugarit, where he is also called Father, and he's also called Kone, or Creator. And he's also attested in Venetian and Israelite work as well. So, yeah.
Well, Milku sounds like a perfectly good Pokemon name.
Well, they do have Miltank, which is kind of close. Is that spelled? Because I don't really know how the Phoenician language works, but is that spelled the same way we would spell like Molech? You know, like the MLK stuff.
Yeah, it's spelled exactly the same way.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. All right, so today we are going to be finishing up the book of Job, and I am.
Hold on a sec, Lawrence. I need the mic test.
Ugh.
It appears that I'm getting no audio from my mic at all.
That's weird. So.
I'm gonna turn it off and turn it on again.
That's weird because apparently Ruben's mic is just not working. But while you guys do that, I'm gonna continue with this. We're finishing up Job today, so I'm glad we have Chris here because he knows Job very well. And I'm gonna start telling. Okay. Chris, you're moving around a lot there, man.
Here.
By the way, Christopher, when did you first become interested in the book of Job?
The book of Job is kind of what
Testing.
got me into biblical studies in general.
Okay.
Actually, I was initially when I first got into biblical studies, I was actually first just getting in it to do historical Jesus studies, and I was actually on the carrier side of things, believe it or not.
Mm.
And
that's how I started too. So.
Oh, how the times have changed.
Hey, this is super weird, Ruben.
And then after that, I started dating a girl who was the daughter of a pastor, and the pastor happened to also be a PhD Old Testament scholar.
For me.
And actually, Lawrence has his commentary. It's Dr. Anthony Tomasino.
Yeah, it's a very good commentary on at least the one that I have on Esther. Really good.
Yeah.
So if they're waiting for this mic check, Christopher, you would say that in particular that Job is the first book you became interested in.
You know, sometimes your puns make me want to carve my own ears out with a rubber spoon.
Oh.
Apparently, I'm using two mics now because technology is black magic that makes no sense.
You look ridiculous, Ruben.
Well.
Can you put both mics on?
Yeah, both.
No.
This one.
You know what you should do?
Yeah, both mics are on.
Yeah, you should do. You should put them on your nipples.
Tell you this.
What?
We can't hear you.
Wow.
Okay, put these things up on the.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, somewhat.
That's really weird.
This one just decided to turn itself off.
Oh
See that?
Yeah, it's not turning back on either.
We were checking audio before the show,
It was fine.
and everything was fine.
And now,
Okay, we're definitely gonna invest in.
I told you, you guys shouldn't have summoned demons.
Yeah,
Hey,
it
maybe
was
you need to do an
the audio.
exorcism. Have you ever tried an exorcism?
Yeah, that's what happened.
Maybe we should do that for the for the next 666 thing.
Yeah.
It would be to get rid of the demon that we summoned in the first place.
you can still wear both. You can still hold on.
This one isn't turning on. Like, I can press the button as many times as I want. It's not turning on.
Okay.
So,
And
that's fucked.
Okay.
But
thank you very much
I
to
am-
the person that's streaming the chat room, so I can say hi, Buddha.
Yes. Hello, everyone in the chat room from Landon. I am going to continue with this because this is getting on. I mean, it's getting on everybody's nerves. I'm sure it's getting on your nerves if you're watching. So, our apologies. I'm going to continue with some stuff. Ruben, once stuff gets figured out, he'll be reading from the King James Version. I have the English Standard Version. We also have the Holy Scriptures, according to some Jews, and the New King James Version. We also have the translation with commentary from Robert Alter. We have a bunch of commentaries and stuff too. We have Erdman's commentary on the Bible, lots of stuff there. We have the Oxford Companion to the Bible. We have the Old Testament survey from the New Interpreter's Bible, and then, before we get into the reading, can you hand me the top book right there?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Chris, can they hear me right now?
I don't think so.
I can hear you well.
Oh, well.
I can't hear anything. So
That's because you're deaf.
I believe you.
hey, that's ableist.
Oh, okay. So this, because there are some people saying that there's a low sound, which I believe, but I've been talking. Oh,
He says we can all hear you. Okay, it's good. Why don't we get ourselves into it?
Okay.
Yes.
So this, I'm just gonna skip past other announcements because it's already been going on for a while. This Friday, we
Yes.
start our new show.
Yes, the Friday Apocryphal
Woohoo.
podcast.
Yes, the Friday Apocryphal podcast. It's going to be at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we are going to be reading the Book of Enoch.
Now, as everyone knows, the Atheist Sunday School viewers are referred to as assholes because they follow ass.
I feel like you
And-
just made that up.
I did. But we can call all of the viewers of the Friday Apocryphal podcast fappers.
Fappers. Okay,
Yep.
so we got fappers and assholes.
Yep.
This is
Yeah,
this
and
is some
hopefully your
high-class
podcast
scholarship.
will show up in podcast stations near you.
Yep.
If not, hear them live.
Podcasts don't exist. It's a myth.
So speaking of books, I happen to have the New American Standard Bible, which was produced by A.J. Holman Company of Philadelphia and New York.
Well, I have the King James version.
Yeah, we already know that. I already introduced. What do you have, Chris? What are you using today?
I have the translation and commentary of Marvin H. Pope.
Classic.
And why don't we get this over?
And if I get bored with that, I have an entire shelf behind me of Job commentaries. So, you know.
If we don't like what Pope has to say, we'll say fuck you, and we'll make you pick a different commentary.
Yep. We'll set Pope on fire and I don't know.
That's exactly
He's
what we'll
dead.
do.
Yep.
He's been dead since the 90s.
Well, all of his writings aren't on fire.
Also, his remains.
Yeah. Yeah, his
Well,
remains.
you've taken popes and brought them out of the grave to try them, so, you know.
Yeah.
it's-
Well, why don't I get us started off?
Your next 666. Your next 666, you're going to raise Marvin H. Pope from the dead
You know what?
and then light him on fire.
Oh, we could try a necromancy.
Yeah, we could do a necromancy goal after the alchemy goal.
Actually, I feel like the necromancy stuff is way cooler.
Yeah, but we have to do alchemy first.
Do we? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you promised.
Yeah,
And
that's a good
everybody, how much money have you raised during your alchemy drive?
It's a little over half now.
Yeah, it's definitely over half. It's about 400 something. Doing some quick math. Yeah, about 430 around.
Well, why don't I get started with chapter 38 then?
Yes.
From the King James Version of the Bible, chapter 38. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said, as we know, previously there have been winds associated with God.
Yeah, definitely.
So the Lord is a wind god now?
Well,
No, the whirlwind would be consistent with either storm or with desert imagery.
yeah, definitely the storm stuff. But Alter has a note on the whirlwind. And by the way, so Elihu just got done talking about how great God is, and now it's God's turn to talk to Job.
Yes.
So we'll see how he makes him feel.
Now, Elihu is not a messenger of God, obviously.
Well,
Because nowhere else previously in any of these books has God sent a messenger, and then when the messenger is still there, showed up himself to say anything.
unless it's to the messenger.
Right.
I mean, he presents himself as the messenger, Elihu.
Yeah, he
but,
does.
And accordingly, apparently God doesn't mention Elihu at all. So it's like he doesn't even exist.
It's almost like the passage was an interpolation.
It's almost as if.
Almost.
Yeah. But anyways, the note about the whirlwind here. Though the Hebrew se'ara probably means simply storm, which makes sense, this translation choice and the consequent phrase, the voice from the whirlwind, have been so deeply embedded in the imagination of speakers of English after the King James Version that it seems wise not to tamper with it. That's stupid, Alter. That's stupid.
Now, has it been established in this story that there is a storm going on right now?
Well, there was a lot of stuff going on earlier, but right now,
Right, because like it says, the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind, which implies that we should already know that there's a whirlwind going on.
Well, there was stuff
But
happening.
if you're on the desert, you got whirlwinds kind of all the time. It's not as if it's unusual.
Yeah,
Well,
I guess.
Go back to chapters 1 and 2, when there was where shit was getting all sorts of fucked up, and there?
Yeah, but as Tom and Thomas said, that you have dust devils and jinns, that sort of thing that appear in the desert. So
Right.
having fantastical deities pop out of a whirlwind is not much of a stretch.
Yeah.
Also, also worth noting is that high-speed desert-type storms and winds like that are actually, while they're uncommon, they're not unheard of in Syria, Palestine.
Sure.
All right.
They can actually be strong enough to damage trees.
Oh, like that demon that we summoned.
Oh, yeah. Who is this that darkeneth counsel by words without knowledge? Who is he referring to? Elihu? Job?
Twitter.
Any of Job's friends?
Well, it sounds like it might be Job, but let's find out.
Yeah.
With God's speech as the climax of the book, the Job poet takes a risk that only a supreme artist confident in his genius could do. What the fuck? He had already created for Job the most extraordinarily powerful poetry to express Job's intolerable anguish and his anger against God. Now, when God finally speaks, the poet fashions for him still greater poetry, which thus becomes a poetic manifestation of God's transcendent power and also an image-for-image response to the death wish poem that frames Job's entire argument. The unusual phrase darkens counsel is not merely an indication of speaking ignorantly, as the parallel in the second verset spells out, but a rejoinder to the spate of images of darkness blotting out light in the death wish poem of chapter 3. In pointed contrast to that poem, the opening section of the Voice from the Whirlwind introduces images of light and then traces a dynamic interplay between light and darkness.
Okay.
Make of that what you will. But it sounds like he's talking about Job.
Yes. Gird up now thy loins like a man, for I will demand of thee, and answer thou me. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare if thou hast understanding.
Ooh.
Yeah,
He's
where
like,
were
"Yo,
you?"
Check me out.
Yeah, where were you before time started? Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or who hath stretched the line upon it? Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Or,
So that morning stars hanging together, is that a reference to like the astrological Venus and
It's actually so in the astrological theology of the ancient Near East, the stars were basically personified as deities. So when we have while the morning stars sang together and all the sons of God exalted or sang for joy, it's linking those two together, and it's basically noting that all the gods are stars, and they were in the beginning hailing God as he created the earth and the rest of the universe and everything.
excellent. Or who shut up the sea with doors when it brake forth as if it had issued out of the womb? When did that happen? Is he what?
This.
It's talking about a kind of a chaos comp, where they call them the chaotic seas. Think
Yeah.
Marduk.
So this is purely metaphorical, whereas
Yeah, this metaphor for the sea.
These couple of chapters with God's speeches are extremely mythological in nature.
okay.
I was just watching a fairly old debate between Rob from Sentinel Apologetics and Nephilim Free, and they were arguing about Job, and it was incredibly amusing. It just kind of like this is one of the verses that came up. Then I think they were arguing about whether or not the flood was local, and this was like a piece of that, I guess. But according to Alter, the womb, this metaphor for the sea as the matrix of creation, is the first of a whole series of birth images that answer to the language of the Death Wish poem, in which, Job talks about how life sucks, better that he was never born.
All right.
Yeah.
When I made the cloud the garment thereof, and thick darkness a swaddling band for it, and break up for it my decreed place, and set bars and doors, and said, hitherto shall thou come, but no further, and here shall thy proud waves be stayed. Hast thou commanded the morning since thy days, and caused the day spring to know this?
Hey, hold on, we got some background noise. I think it's probably coming from Chris, yeah.
Yeah, it's gone now. And caused the day spring to know his place, that it might take hold of the ends of the earth, that the wicked might be shaken out of it. Like a blanket.
Ooh.
Like they're shaking the flat earth to get rid of the wicked people.
That is a hilarious image.
Yes.
But evidently,
Shaking those wicked people, yes.
so evidently it is light that takes hold of the far corners of the earth, shaking out or exposing the wicked who hide in the night's darkness. So yeah, very, very metaphorical. But it's just interesting that they use, corners of the earth.
It is turned as clay to the seal, and they stand as a garment. And from the wicked their light is withholden, and the high arm shall be broken. Hast thou entered into the springs of the sea? Or hast thou walked in search of the depth? Have the gates of death been opened unto thee?
Yes.
Or hast thou seen the doors of the shadow of death? Hast thou perceived the breadth of all the earth? Declare if thou knowest it all. Where is the way where light dwelleth? And as for darkness, where is the place thereof? That thou shouldst take it to the bound thereof, and that thou shouldst know the paths to the house thereof.
Really quick, with verse 17, one thing you should know is that when it says death, it actually is saying Mot. So have Mot's gates been revealed to you? Have you seen the dark portals? So it's literally referring to the Canaanite underworld there.
Okay. Knowest thou it, because thou wast then born? Or because the number of thy days is great? Hast thou entered into the treasures of the snow? Or hast thou seen the treasures of the hail, which I have reserved against the time of trouble, against the day of battle and war?
So wait, hold on.
What kind of battle is
I don't know.
referring
Is
to?
this something that he is, like, at least metaphorically speaking, is he like reserving these kinds of forces of nature for other? I don't know if it would be like other big events going on in the more natural world, like for some reason to put an exclamation point on it.
Well, like,
Yeah, with the hordes of hail and everything, it's basically indicating that he reserves those for times of conflict.
Okay.
by what way is the light parted, which scattereth the east wind upon the earth? Who hath divided a watercourse for the overflowing of waters, or a way for the lightning of thunder, to cause it to rain on the earth where no man is, on the wilderness wherein there is no man, to satisfy the desolate and waste ground, and to cause the bud of the tender herb to spring forth? Hath the rain a feather? Or who hath begotten the drops of dew? Out of whose womb came the ice, and the hoary frost of heaven? Who hath gendered it?
I'm guessing you.
Yeah, I guess. Like, these are all obviously
Rhetorical
questions.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, I'm God, you're not. The waters are hid as with a stone, and the face of the deep is frozen. Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades?
It's speaking of constellations now.
Yes.
Yeah, the Pleiades are those, like, if they're really faint, so you can kind of see them, like, in your peripheral, really. They're like 7 stars, I think. They're like in this little cluster. In what?
Ask Landon.
Oh, okay.
Well,
I guess
yeah,
Landon can explain them better.
Known about 150 in there, but commonly you can see 7 or 8 depending on how good your visual acuity is. Japanese, by the way, call that Subaru. It's an open cluster.
Or loose
Of
the
stars.
bands of Orion.
Now, by the way, I should point out that this is one of the places where Seventh-day Adventists talk about that the Belt Orion is the direction of heaven. It's according to one Seventh-day infidel that talked about it.
Okay. Canst thou bring forth Mazaroth in his season? Or
What's
canst
Mazaroth?
Yeah, what's Mazaroth? Is that another star cluster?
For which verse?
Verse 32.
Yeah.
Oh, it says Great Bear and her cubs.
Oh, it also says, or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons?
Okay.
So could it be referring to Canis Major?
We're unsure as to what it refers to as a celestial body. but what the Vulgate renders it as Lucifer and therefore as a term for Venus.
Yes.
However, that's still skeptical. We don't know for sure.
Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Well, you know what? Our viewers, if they come in on Friday and view us reading the Book of Enoch,
The Book of Enoch.
will know the ordinances of heaven.
You know, it's really interesting that, I mean, we have read the Bible quite a bit,
Yes.
I think, in the past 115 weeks. And this is probably the clearest astrotheology we
Yes.
have seen.
Yeah, we haven't had a lot of astrological
I don't think
references.
we've had astrological references, but this is like straight up
Yeah,
way closer to astrotheology.
yes.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting how different that is from everything else.
Yes. Canst thou send lightnings that they may go and say unto thee, Here we are?
Yes.
I guess that's what lightning is doing. Okay.
Yep, that's what thunder is. It's like, Here I am. Who hath put wisdom in the inward parts? Or who hath given understanding to the heart?
So here's a big note. So Pope renders it, who put wisdom in Thoth? Who gave Sequi understanding? And for his notes, he writes specifically.
For which verse was that? You said Thoth?
36?
36.
36.
Okay, interesting. So Alter translates it, who placed in the hidden parts wisdom, or who gave the mind understanding. And while Chris is finding whatever he needs to find, for that verse, the note is the meaning of the two nouns here, tahut, which probably is, well, it's actually closer to tahot, which sounds a lot more like Thoth, and sequi have long been disputed. Some think they refer to birds, the ibis, which just makes sense because that's Thoth, he's an ibis, and the rooster, or even to mythological figures.
Yeah.
Right.
The New American Standard says that the alternate for word for mind there in verse 36 is cock or rooster.
Right. What Marvin H. Pope works off of Eisfeld's Tautos und Senkuniatan. Senkuniatan was a supposed Phoenician historian. We don't know if he ever existed or not. But yeah, the reading of it for ibis is what he tends to favor, and so he translates it as Thoth and sequi there.
All right. Who can number the clouds?
Oh, real quick, sequi. What he notes is that he follows Hoffman's work and where sequi is a term for the planet Mercury.
Oh.
Huh.
So
All right.
that continues the astro-theological
Yeah,
trend.
yeah, definitely.
This is an interesting verse, 37.
Because usually, like, I'm very, I'm very much against reading astrotheology into the Bible unless it's like this explicit.
Yeah.
Like here, that you can talk about astrotheology, but like people try to apply it to many parts in like everything else in the Bible. I've seen people try to apply it to like Kings. I've seen people apply it to Genesis a whole fucking shit ton.
Yeah.
And it's just I don't think that's really appropriate there.
Don't you know that Abraham is actually a star?
Don't you know you gotta get punched in the face?
So this next
Anyway.
verse, who can number the clouds in wisdom, or who can stay the bottles of heaven? When the dust.
Well, I mean,
groweth
what you
in
do for
darkness,
numbering the
and
clouds is you take the satellite map and you do a cloud detector, and you make a decision as to what constitutes a cloud and what constitutes a group of clouds. and then you do the enumeration over the earth, and you've got number of tiles. I mean,
Yeah,
what's so hard about that?
but who can stay the bottles of heaven? What are the bottles of heaven?
I have
Water
It,
jars?
jars.
what Marvin Pope translates it as water jars of heaven.
Yeah, source of
So
rain.
it's probably referencing infernal rain.
Okay. Wilt thou hunt the prey for the lion? Or fill the appetite of the young lions when they couch in their dens and abide in the covert to lie in wait? Who provideth for the raven his food? When his young ones cry unto God, they wander for lack of meat. And that's the end of chapter 38. If you're enjoying the stream so far, give us a like. I see 23 viewers. We should see 23 likes
Or
/
dislikes. We don't care. It all helps.
And I will return momentarily.
Oh,
When
So basically, this big chapter says, you know, my deistic phallic symbol is bigger than yours, right?
I mean, it's yeah, basically.
You know, that basically, because I see basically what it said is that God basically says, Job, you're ignorant of creation, and I speak of nature and its personifications.
And we have to remember that as a narrative, this started with God being very confident that Job, his good servant Job, would not lose faith. So he was confident, and that didn't work out too well for him. So now he's got to convince Job. He's got to talk to Job himself.
Well, yeah, we should also keep in mind, though, that the prologue and the epilogue are likely not original to the rest of the book of Job.
Yeah, I know. I'm just talking about in the narrative.
If we take all of Job as a whole.
Yeah.
When do we think that? How much later do you think the epilogue and prologue were added? And were the epilogue and prologue added at the same time?
I would say that they were probably exilic in time frame, roughly. But
centuries, multiple centuries.
So that would have been 6th century BCE.
So is it as opposed to when this was written in maybe an 8th century?
I tend to think around 8th or 7th century BCE for when the dialogue was
1 or 2 centuries later.
Yeah.
And do we think the epilogue and prologue were added at the same time or different times?
Yeah, I think they were from the same. I think they were actually likely a small work in their own right originally. Because if you take them on their own as a complete whole, then they have a complete story that follows through on its own. It's completely coherent with that when you take those two together. So I would say that those were likely added at the same time and that they were split apart to bookend Job.
In the chat, Sonic, to answer your question, no, Job is not the oldest book in the Old Testament. So
why? Okay. We have another. There's a whole other stream. The first stream. We answer that question. Please.
Yeah,
Tell your friends. Tell your friends it's not the oldest book in the Bible. If they don't believe you, bash their skulls in. I'm endorsing violence about this.
If you're interested, we have a very long discussion about it in our first episode covering Job. So if you just go back in the Atheist Sunday School playlist and find our first episode on Job, then you're gonna hear a lot, mostly from Chris, about how it's not, in fact, the oldest book in the Bible. So let's hop into chapter 39, shall we?
Yes.
And of course, God is still talking. Do you know when the mountain goats give birth? Do you,
Yeah.
Reuben? Do you?
I don't.
Usually after the gestation period.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, they gotta get impregnated first.
Do you observe the calving of the does? Can you
Not
number
generally.
the months they fulfill? Probably. And do you know
Yes.
the time when they give birth? When they crouch,
Gestation
bring forth
period.
their offspring, and are delivered of their young?
So when it says bring forth, the literal meaning of the Hebrew verb is split open. A word choice that strikingly conveys the poet's sense that the procreative drive in nature and the nurturing one as well cannot be separated from violence.
Oh boy.
Mm.
Their young ones become strong. They grow up in the open. They go out and do not return to them. Who has let the wild donkey go free? Who has loosed the bonds of the swift donkey? To whom I have given...
Just to let you know, my translation says wild ass.
Yes, as is tradition.
Eerdman says, the times of activities in the world of nature, that is, of wild animals, are unknown to humans, 39, 1 through 4. Animals do things that humans cannot comprehend. They are outside the bounds of human wisdom. God has provided for these animals who refuse to be domesticated. God laughs at humans' attempts to tame such animals.
Well, God was wrong. We get this perfectly with science, and
We do a pretty good job taming animals.
yeah, that too.
Science is false. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows that science exists just to hide the young flat Earth.
Yeah,
That's
apparently.
can't argue with that.
Allegedly.
Can't argue with the
We
flat
all,
Earth.
we all know Landon is the king of this conspiracy.
I'm part of the Illuminati that God is speaking about because I'm answering some of the questions, rhetorically.
I knew it.
Speaking. But God has been basically been putting out a bunch of rhetorical stuff, and it's like, do you expect an answer or are you just spouting to hear your?
Yeah.
God likes to hear his own voice.
Yeah.
Landon runs those gravity machines that convince people that it exists. Back in the biblical times,
right.
everyone could just float around wherever they want.
That's true.
No,
That is absolutely
I'm just gonna say. I'm just gonna say though, there are so few times where you'd probably actually be able to get to talk out of a whirlwind. At that point, you just make it go as long as you can, because that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, talk about good special effects because you have to have enough of a voice to overcome the whirl and then basically have enough voice to people pay attention and say, hey, the whirlwind's speaking, to comprehend what it's saying. Still, it's kind of going on for a while, but anyway, let.
Mm-hmm.
The next chapter's a lot more interesting.
Well, let's see what other rhetorical questions God has for Job. To whom I have given the arid plain for his home and the salt land for his dwelling place. He scorns.
Well, you took that away when you smashed it all up for Job. So
yeah, it's not looking so good. Although he's specifically talking about the donkeys still. He scorns the tumult of the city. He hears not the shouts of the driver. He ranges the mountains as his pasture, and he searches after every green thing. Is the wild ox willing to serve you? Will he? You know what's really funny? Even during this time, like the Egyptians already completely tamed oxes. It was perfectly fine over there. Will he spend the night at your manger? Can you bind him in the furrow with ropes? Yes. Or will he harrow the valleys after you? Will you depend on him because his strength is great? And will you leave him to your labor?
God should visit a rodeo sometime.
Yeah, he really should, shouldn't he?
Yeah. One note is that Pope actually translates it as buffalo, and the wild breeds of buffalo out in the Middle East are super undomesticated and untamed.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, it does say ox. What does altar say?
It just says wild ox. I'm assuming that it means something closer to an aurochs or one of the precursors.
Yeah, those
to
things were
cows.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were very very powerful. Yeah. So
Lots
anyways,
of meat, though.
I guess, yeah. Do you have faith in him that he will return your grain and gather it to your threshing floor? The wings of the ostrich wave proudly. That's not very proud.
Alter says, this entire verse is notoriously obscure. Modern scholars are generally agreed that the bird in question is an ostrich, though the term used here is not the usual batyana, but rather a kind of poetic epithet, wing of song, or perhaps better, screech wing, a designation alluding to the loud sounds the ostrich makes. The somewhat enigmatic verb ne'elasha appears to derive from a root associated with joy or perhaps joyful movement. In Proverbs 7:18, it appears as a verb for sex.
Oh, well, yeah, that would kind of make sense because that's actually the next thing. But are they the pinions and plumage of love?
Right.
Are they?
Alter says, is the pinion the plume like the storks? And he says, although each Hebrew word of this verse set is understandable, they make little sense together, and hence any translation is no more than a guess. A very literal rendering of the Hebrew would be, is a pinion, a stork, and plume.
Is it?
No.
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 Are they the same kind?
For she leaves her eggs to the earth and lets them be warmed on the ground, forgetting that a foot may crush them, and that the wild beast may trample them. She deals cruelly with her young, as if they were not hers. Though her labor be in vain, yet she has no fear, because God has made her forget wisdom. And we're talking about a bird here,
Yeah.
just so we're clear.
Hey. God ordains wisdom in birds. Shut the fuck up.
Okay, I'm sorry, everybody.
But
What
because
about
God
parrots?
made her forget it, right? The bird had it, and God forget it. That's why.
Don't you know that
Ostriches are
before?
very-
Yeah.
No.
Before man
No.
fell, all the animals talked, not just snakes.
Yeah, and so those have been in the Serengeti know that ostriches are basically these giant walking food chunks, right, for the carnivores.
Aren't we all?
And if you said, oh, okay, let's have this ostrich, this giant, nice food chunk, sit on these eggs for, the time it takes for the eggs to hatch, then all the carnivores have to do is wait for ostriches to, sit down, and then they'd have a meal and some eggs on top of that. So instead, the ostrich does is puts them in kind of a nest and then leaves them. And the carnivores really aren't into eggs, so that's the wisdom of the ostrich.
Also, hashtag not just snakes. Hashtag English was good enough for Jesus. Hashtag English is good enough for me.
So anyway, but that's actually a important thing the ostrich does, to not be on constant tending of them. They do sit on the eggs for a while, but they don't constantly tend them.
Yes. Eerdmans says, the description of the ostrich suggests that animals may do things that human beings feel to be immoral. It leaves its eggs and deals cruelly with its young. Yet this is the way God has ordained it, and the ostrich is happy with that. It does not question God's ways as Job has done.
But the thing is, it specifically says that, when it says because God has made her forget wisdom and given her no share in understanding, is that more of, because what that sounds like to me is, if we're, relating it to what Ruben was just reading from Erdman's, it seems like to me it really is a don't question kind of thing, and very much, just don't
Hey, guys.
don't really think about it.
Hey guys,
What's
you
up?
realize that we just spent like 8 minutes talking about an ostrich?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yes.
Yes, we did. Why don't you continue?
Thanks. But let's see, ostrich stuff. When she rouses herself to flee, she laughs at the horse and his rider.
So Alter says she races, and he says the verb hamri occurs only here. The Aramaic translations understood it to mean soar, and in modern Hebrew it's used for a plane's taking off from the ground. But ostriches don't fly.
Yeah, ostriches don't fly, so...
The translation is a guess based on context.
Okay, gotcha. Do you give the horse his might? Do you clothe his neck with a mane? Do you make him leap like the locust? Now we do. His majestic snorting is terrifying. He paws in the valley and exults in his strength. He goes out to meet the weapons?
Yep.
Is that like, when you have a general riding a horse?
Pope translates it as he rushes to meet the fray.
It's like those chariots, iron chariot things, are drawn by horses.
Exulting in power goes out to the clash of arms.
Goes out. Okay, so you ride them when you go into war.
Yep.
Okay. Anyways, he laughs at fear and is not dismayed. He does not turn back from the sword. Upon him rattle the quiver, the flashing spear, and the javelin. With fierceness and rage, he swallows the ground. What the hell does that mean? He swallows the ground? Like he's going so fast that like all the dust is kicked up and he just looks majestic. Like cool guys don't look at explosions kind of thing.
Is he talking about ostriches still?
No, this is horses.
Oh, okay. Well, he swallows the ground. What do you want to know? I mean, come on.
Horses swallow the ground. Bible says so.
Yep.
Move on.
Great, thanks. Now we know.
Especially while they're at battle.
Yes, especially. So swallowing the ground, he cannot stand still at the sound of the trumpet. When the trumpet sounds, he says, "Aha!"
Aha!
It says that in here too.
Yeah.
Aha!
Aha!
He smells the battle from afar, the thunder of the captains and the shouting. Is it by your understanding that the hawk soars and spreads his wings towards the south? Is it at your command that the eagle mounts up and makes his nest on high? On the rock he dwells and makes him home, on the rocky crag and stronghold. From there he spies out the prey. His eyes, behold!
Behold!
Thank you. It from far away. His young ones suck up blood, and where the slain are, there he is.
So, Alter says...
You can't control animals, and they just kind of do stuff by their nature, and so should you.
Alter says...
But go ahead.
Okay. One of the remarkable aspects of the Job poet's vision of nature is that it is so completely unsentimental. The creatures of the wild, with the exception of the peculiar ostrich, are endowed with an instinct to nurture their young.
Hold on. New shirt idea. Peculiar ostrich.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
Speaking of
carnivores-
shirt ideas, see?
Yes. Good shirt. For carnivores,
Can prevent bad scholarship.
that nature and nurture involves violence, destroying living creatures in order to sustain life in the offspring. The concluding image, then, of God's first speech is of the fledgling eagles in the nest, their little beaks open to gulp down the bloody scraps of flesh that their parent has brought them.
That's nice.
The moral calculus of nature clearly does not jibe with the simple set of equations and consequences laid out in Proverbs and in Psalms.
Great.
I don't know. I think this deity waxing on here is just being kind of a jerk and saying, because and I said, well, hey, you don't do this and don't do this and don't do this, like, but But there's assumption also underlying in this text that animals do things because of reasons,
Yeah.
right?
well,
Like
do
that
it
some
because-
other thing compels animals to do what they do is kind of the assumption here.
Anyways, that is the end of chapter 39. Make sure you guys drop a like, subscribe if you haven't. And do you hear something, Ruben?
I do hear something, some mysterious thing in the distance.
I sure hope our guests also hear that to
Is it
make
a
sure we're not
whirlwind?
crazy.
Yeah, Chris, is the thing up? No. Oh, put it up.
Why would I do that?
Well, tell me when it's up.
I'll do that.
It might be a whirlwind.
It's a whirlwind.
Is it? Is it up yet?
Behold, I am your Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and I want to let all you heathens and sinners know that I support this wonderful episode of Atheist Sunday School. Lawrence and Reuben try their very best to bring you the true glory of the Bible, and they need your help. They have provided links to their Patreon page and other social media just for you. Once again, my name is Jesus Christ, and this is Milwaukee Atheists. The Lord is with them. God bless.
Mein
Wow.
Gott!
Jesus!
Wow,
That
that
was
was
incredible.
Jesus Christ.
it was a whirlwind speaking to us.
Obviously.
Obviously.
Came in the form of a whirlwind. You can't deny that.
It just crashed through our studio and...
It did its
Makes
thing.
me want to. It makes me want to read from a King James version.
the
Oh.
best version.
That is the best version. That is what that's what I heard from G-Man. That's what I heard from Kent Hovind. I hear that a lot, and it's I'm beginning to believe it because that's how cult-like mentalities work.
And what greater
You know
authority
what?
is there on
You know
the
what,
Bible
Lawrence?
than
I
G-Man?
can't wait for the comments you get on this video about the KJV.
Wait, what'd you say, Chris?
I can't wait for the comments you'll get about the KJV on this video.
And do add comments as one of the things that it helps. So,
Yeah, that's true. It does help.
So chapter 40.
Yes, chapter 40.
Then the Lord God said to Job, as if God hasn't been speaking, but he has been speaking, so I guess he said, and God continues.
Yeah.
Will the fault finder contend with the Almighty?
So hold on.
Like that.
This is Shaddai.
It says Shaddai. Okay.
Shaddai.
Okay. So it's kind of interesting here because remember earlier when we were talking about Satan being like a judge on the earth? That's kind of sounds like that's the job they're describing, right? The
Yeah.
fault finder.
Yeah.
You know, this is a
Yeah.
rhetorical question he's asking. He says, will he who disputes with Shaddai be reproved? The answer is yes. It happened in Genesis.
Well, but as I say, I assume the fault finder is like we can now the modern interpretation we could say is an atheist. Well, the atheist contend with the Almighty. Let him who reproves God answer it. Job answered
mostly
God
it's mostly just saying some jackass who decides to contend with God.
Yeah. So anyway, it says, will the fault finder contend with the Almighty? Let him who reproves God answer it. And then Job answered God and said, he could do bad timing. Behold!
Behold!
I am insignificant. What can I reply to thee? I lay my hand on my mouth. Once I have spoken, and I will not answer. Even twice, I will add no more.
So
I guess what Job's saying, yeah, got me, God.
yeah, I'll
got
shut
me
up
on
now.
on that ostrich thing.
Yeah.
Let alone the constellation and then all the silly astrology and so forth. And the fact, by the way, the fact that this so-called deity has been talking astrology just shows how messed up this stuff is. Okay, so I once I have spoken, I will not answer. Even twice, I will add no more. Then God answered Job out of the storm, not the whirlwind, now the storm, and said,
Same thing.
now gird up your loins like a man.
And he said the exact
I will
same
ask-
thing. Hold on. He said the exact same thing in chapter 38.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, verse 3 is the exact same as verse 38:3 is exactly the same as verse 47.
I like how God's
Yes.
only response
And this is
grow up
This is
hair.
why there's also debate over the authenticity of the two passages where God speaks out of the whirlwind.
Sure. I actually, that makes a lot of sense, because the first part that we read was, it was all just God talking, and now Job just promised he would shut up, and then there's a repetition of something we already saw.
Yes.
Yeah.
This one's actually the nature of this net of 40 and 41 is actually a lot different though, and you'll see why.
Okay.
Mythologically, there's a lot of different stuff going on.
Okay. So as I say, it says, then the Lord answered Job out of the storm and said, now gird up your loins like a man, and I will ask you, and you will instruct me. Will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be justified? Or will you have an arm like God, that you can thunder with a voice like his? Oh, I'm rolling
Wait,
past.
hold on. This is God talking, right?
Yes.
And he uses the third person? Because he said,
Yes.
yeah, have you an arm like God, me.
God's been using the third person this whole time.
Has he?
Yeah.
God talks in third person through all of the book of Job.
Oh, yeah, what do you know? He does. Okay, no, I'm looking back at it now. Yeah, he does. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Jeez.
So verse
Do you
10.
not have eyes like Chris?
No.
Do you not have eyes like Reuben?
You're wearing glasses.
So, verse 10. Adorn yourself with eminence and dignity, and clothe yourself with honor and majesty. Pour out your overflowings of your anger, and look on everyone who is proud, and make him low. Ooh. Look on everyone who is proud, and humble him, and tread down the wicked where they stand, putting them in their place. Hide them in the dust altogether. Bind them, as in the one true ring, we're in the hidden place.
This so Alter says the grave, and he says
Yes.
the Hebrew teman means literally the hidden place, but this is evidently an epithet for the grave, or perhaps the underworld.
Yeah, I got world below in my translation.
I think Tolkien's imagery of in the darkness bind them is more poetic than something
I'm now using the NRSV, and the NRSV says the world below.
Yeah, I also have the world below.
Then
I'm seeing if
I will
Aaron's
also
had
confess
it.
to you that your own right hand can save you.
My right hand saves me in bed all the time.
Yeah, but anyway,
Masturbation jokes.
as
We've
I
got
said-
them.
Yep.
Continue.
Okay, so as I say, and then I will also confess to you. Right? If you do this thing, I'll confess to you, and in that in your own right, your right hand can save you. Right? Behold.
Behold!
Behold.
Now, Behemoth, which I have made well as you, he eats the grass like an ox. So Behemoth, my New American Standard refers to that as a hippopotamus.
So
No, it's wrong. It's basically a mythological bull.
So, yeah, I have a
We're gonna find some penis imagery for it later on.
All right, let's read through verse.
Well, Alter here says about behemoth, the Hebrew word means beast.
Yeah.
It is in plural form, possibly a plural of intensification or majesty, but the noun is treated as singular and masculine throughout. Behemoth clearly takes off from the Egyptian hippopotamus, but in his daunting but in his daunting proportions, his fierce virility, and his absolute impregnability, he represents a mythological heightening of the actual beast, just as Leviathan is even more patently a mythological heightening of the Egyptian crocodile.
No.
What the fuck?
Leviathan is a chaos dragon.
All right, I'm gonna read some.
It's Lotan. It's literally connected to Lotan. We know this. It's in the Baal cycle.
Okay.
So he says whether there is some counterpart to Behemoth in Canaanite or Sumerian myth, as some have claimed, is a matter of dispute.
The cosmic bull.
Okay.
There's a lot of cosmic bull going on here, I must say.
So, just one thing, Landon, if you want to just finish the verses through 18, then we can talk about Behemoth some more. How about that?
Okay. All right. So, at the end of 15, he eats grass like an ox. Behold!
Behold!
Now his strength is in his lions, and his power is the muscles of his belly.
Its strength is in its loins.
Loins. And his power is in muscles of his belly, right? He's got abs and belly stuff. He bends his tail like a cedar. His sinews of his thighs knit together.
It says his
His
sinews
bones
twine
are
together.
like tubes of bronze. His limbs are like bars of iron.
So do the apologists say that this is a prediction of automatons?
No. All right.
Here's
let's talk about Behemoth.
Yes, his balls sinews twine together.
That's a great translation.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Fuck. Shut up for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to drive down Milwaukee and I'm going to strangle you guys.
Ah, finally, we get to hang out. Go ahead. Continue, Chris.
Okay. We have to first take into when it says it makes it should more accurately be translated as in 17 as it makes its tail stiff like a cedar.
Yeah, we got.
It's talking about its dick.
It's not. It's bending his tail like a cedar. It's erecting his phallic symbol like a cedar.
Yes. This whole thing is filled with a bunch of sexual imagery because it is literally talking about a bull's penis.
Yeah.
And balls.
Because it said, his strength is in his loins, his powers and muscles of his belly. He bends his thingy like a cedar. His sinews of his thighs are knit together. I mean, that's ejaculation.
Yeah.
So
it is talking about it's talking about a celestial bull. It's a special bull. It's a myth bull. I'm so fed up of reading commentaries that are like, yeah, it's a hippopotamus, and I'm like, no, it's not. Shut up.
Yeah, because hippopotamus doesn't really have those other qualities, right?
No.
Now it's true. Hippopotamuses are muscular, but I'm not sure that the tail of a hippopotamus does more than just fling poop around.
Or there's a very, very good Ken Ham version, which argues that when it says that its tail is like a cedar, it's because it's a really, really big tail, and it's actually a dinosaur tail.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot.
So Behemoth is like a Tyrannosaurus or something like that.
No, like it's one of those brachiosaurus things.
Yeah,
those big
like
four-legged ones.
Something huge and
really
powerful.
Long neck.
Anyway, so I guess because this is God trying to impress us. So, shall I continue with verse 19?
Well, I don't understand
Yes.
where Alter gets this idea that Leviathan is a mythological heightening of the Egyptian crocodile.
Well, this is actually in Erdman's
That
too.
was
It's in
that was
yeah.
that's when that was a thing for ages. Commentaries that go back to like the 1800s were always arguing that Leviathan was connected with a crocodile, and it's primarily because it primarily happens because we had no knowledge of Canaanite mythology, and we had no understanding that Leviathan is actually a fucking chaos dragon. Think Tiamat.
So we're it's just like this is what we have to go off of. But yeah, Erdman's also says this that pretty much it says like almost the same thing, that Behemoth is a hippopotamus, as seen here as a primeval creature that only God can overcome. And then it says about Leviathan, likewise, Leviathan is a crocodile, but here seen as the enemy of God in creation, whom God alone has tamed.
Well then.
So Chris, you're saying this that the imagery in this particular paragraph is a sexual imagery of a sort of like a dragon-like.
Well, the sexual imagery of Behemoth is a bull, and sexual imagery relating to bulls is pretty common in the ancient Near East. That's why El is called Bull El. Baal is connected with the bull. Even God is called the Bull of Jacob.
Yeah.
All right. Let's.
Okay. So God's doing weird stuff.
God has a big dick.
So verse 19. He is the first of the ways of God. Let his maker bring near his sword. Surely the mountains will bring him food, and all the beasts of the field play there. Under the lotus plants he lies down, in the covert of reeds and marsh. The lotus plants cover him with shade. Is that how they're getting this concept that it was a water creature, I guess? The lotus plants cover him with shade. He wallows in the brook surrounding him. The willows of the brook surround him, sorry. If the river...
lots of translations just don't even translate the word. They just say the willows of the wadi. Because there's not a really good translation for it.
Hold on, I'm sorry. Wait, what did you say? The rivers of what?
The willows of the wadi.
Okay, wadi is that's Egyptian. I've heard that before. I can't remember if that's a river or if that's the wadi. Oh wait, there's the Wadi Hamamat. That's something. I remember this word from my fucking Egyptian courses. Oh my god, I can't fucking remember. Okay, I'm gonna fucking Google it. You guys continue. I can't remember.
Let's real quick. Let's see what Pope has to say.
Okay, yeah, because I fucking remember that. Is it just an archaeological site? Was it a city?
Is this 40 or 41?
It's a valley. It was a valley. Wadi Hamamat was a valley in Egypt.
We're 40, verses 19 to 24 is this section that I'm going to reread after all this commentary.
Okay, so
Okay, or I can read it. Let me finish that paragraph, Christopher, and then add
Sure.
commentary. So
Sure.
It says, "He is the first of the ways of God. Let his maker bring near his sword. Surely the mountains will bring him food, and all the beasts of the field play there. Under the lotus plants he lies down, in the covert of the reeds and the marsh. The lotus plants cover him with shade. The willows of the brook surround him. If the river rages, he's not alarmed. He is confident. And though the Jordan rushes to his mouth. Can anyone capture him when he is on watch? With barbs, can anyone pierce his nose?
Huh.
Again, that's like the camel or something drawing the critter there. So,
Yeah.
Christopher?
Real quick, with verse 22, where it says Wadi, Pope actually notes that Wadi should actually, the term is more closely to be identified with Syria, Palestine.
So I think the word just by itself means valley, but I don't know if like maybe it's just like different languages thing. Jonah says that it's the Arabic term for valley, which seems legit, but I don't know Arabic. So I don't know if those are necessarily connected or not.
Okay, 41. Here we go. Lots of fun. Can you draw out Leviathan with a fishhook? Or press down its tongue with a cord? Can you put a rope in its nose or pierce its jaw with a hook? Will it make many supplications to you? Will it speak soft words to you? Will it make a covenant with you to be taken as your servant forever? Will you play with it as with a bird, or will you put it on a leash for your girls? Will traders bargain over it? Will they divide it among the merchants? Can you fill its skin with harpoons or its head with fishing spears? Lay hands on it? Think of the battle. You will not do it again. So yeah, the language here is all of how it's basically undefeatable by the hands of man.
Sure.
So is this like
It's a bloody cosmic chaos dragon.
So, but some of the imagery is also like, aren't they drawing on imagery of something like a whale?
No. What we actually find out in their descriptions of Leviathan. Did you guys go through Psalms yet?
No, that's coming up next.
Okay. What you'll find out in Psalms is some of the different ways that they portray Leviathan. Also in Isaiah, they portray it as a many-headed serpent.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Any hope of capturing it will be disappointed. We're not even the gods overwhelmed at the sight of it. There's one. The gods are overwhelmed at the sight of it. I wonder why. It's a chaos dragon.
What verse is that?
9.
9.
So I had a behold there.
I also had a behold.
Yeah, this is totally different in its setup of verses.
Oh yeah, that's because it goes off the Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yeah. Verse 9 in.
You have behold or not?
Just open it. It doesn't matter.
Let's go. Let's do a behold, because that's
Fine.
some
Behold!
Verse 9 is behold.
Thank you.
Okay.
So yeah, verse 9. As
Your
you can see
expectation is
here,
false.
That's where verse 41 starts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what verse said that the gods were couldn't stand up to him? What verse was that?
41:9.
Okay, yeah, I don't have gods at all here. Behold, the hope of a man is false. He is laid low even at the sight of him.
Mm-hmm.
No
So let me see what.
fears that he dares arouse him, right?
Okay, let me see what Pope has to say about this.
Yeah, and then from altar, look, all hope of him is dashed. At his mere sight, one is cast out. No fierce one could arouse him. And who before me could stand up? Who before me could stand up? Okay,
This is first person, not third person.
Okay, Jack. Hey, I have the answer to our problems. In verse 9, where we're not even the gods overwhelmed at the sight of it. Here's what Pope says. The Masoretes have obscured the sense of the line by vocalizing the word El or the proper name El as a preposition El, unto. The Syriac and Semiacus read Elaha or Ho Theos. Chain's emendation of El to Elim is very probable, as will appear presently. So basically the text looks like it was amended to alter the presence of the gods out.
Yeah, that sounds very, very plausible.
So no one is so fierce as to dare to stir it up. Who can stand before it? Who can confront it and be safe under the whole heaven? Who? I will not keep silence concerning its limbs or its mighty strength or its splendid frame. There's some more description of it. It has limbs. It's therefore not a whale.
Oh, whales were mammals, and they've got skeletal
False.
thingies.
Whales were created by God, and they only have fins. They don't have they don't have the evolutionary leftover of limbs.
Oh,
Right, they're fish.
I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, they're fish. Big old-
Dawkins is wrong.
Great fish.
But Dawkins is always wrong. Dawkins is a servant of Satan. He worships Baal.
Oh, that's surprising to him. So anyway, keep going.
Okay. Who can strip off its outer garment? Who can penetrate its double coat of mail? Who can open the doors of its face? There is terror all around its teeth. Its back is made of shields and rows, shut up closely as with a seal. So it's talking about it being scaled.
Yeah,
Yeah,
in the King
dragon
James,
thingies.
it literally says his scales are his pride, shut up together with a close seal.
Right.
Dragon thingies. Yes.
One is so near to another that no air can come between them. They are joined to one another. They clasp each other and cannot be separated. It sneezes flash forth light, and its eyes are like the eyelids of the dawn. From its mouth go flaming torches, sparks of fire leap out. Out of its nostrils comes smoke, as if from a boiling pot and burning rushes. Its breath kindles coals, and a flame comes out of its mouth, and in its neck abides strength, and terror dances before it. The folds of its flesh cling together. It is firmly cast and immovable. Its heart is as hard as stone, as hard as the lower millstone. When it raises itself up, the gods are afraid. At the crashing, they are beside themselves. Though the sword reaches it, it does not avail, nor does the spear, the dart, or the javelin. It counts iron as straw, and bronze as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make it flee. Sling stones for it are turned to chaff. Clubs are counted as chaff. It laughs at the rattle of javelins. Its underparts are like sharp potsherds. It spreads itself like a threshing sledge on the mire. It makes the deep boil like a pot. It makes the sea like a pot of ointment. It leaves a shining wake behind it. One would think the deep to be white-haired. On the earth it has no equal, a creature without fear. It surveys everything that is lofty. It is king over all that are proud.
So when it comes to the final verse there, Alter notes that the same phrase, B'nai Shahat, proud beasts, occurs in 28:8 in the Hymn to Wisdom. Since it refers to beasts, it is reasonable to assume that the meaning here is the same. What is remarkable about this whole powerfully vivid evocation of Leviathan is that the monotheistic poet has taken a figure from mythology traditionally seen as the cosmic enemy of the god of order, and transformed it into this daunting creature that is preeminent in, but also very much a part of God's team in creation.
Chris, what does your verse 22 say?
I have
In its neck
in his neck abides strength and
In
terror
its neck
dances
abides
before.
strength, and terror dances before it.
Okay, the King James says, "In his neck remaineth strength, and sorrow is turned into joy before him."
Okay, so yeah, he likes it. Okay, that makes sense.
Well, if you like it, you, the viewer,
Yeah,
give us
personally,
a like.
you.
Yeah,
If you like it,
I'm looking at you.
you.
Also, so for this last chapter, there is a Septuagint edition that we're going to want to read because it's very interesting.
All right,
Fantastic.
just tell me when.
But if you like this so far, perhaps you could do us a favor and click that likey button.
Yeah.
Maybe and subscribe, maybe in the bell. And if you really want to be cool, and Marty Cool Ones, you could become a Patreon.
Yes.
Where if for example you do a go to Patreon, you could, for example, you could have a teacher where you could get a website with teachers like this, and it says only you can prevent bad scholarship. And I refer that to those people talking about the oldest book in the Bible, right? You can prevent bad scholarship.
Excellent.
It's up to you. It is your duty. Okay.
Well, and let me get into chapter 42, and Chris, just tell me when the edition is. Then Job answered.
I'll let everyone I'll let you guys just finish chapter 42, and then we can read the edition. It's just an altered version of the epilogue.
Okay.
Then Job answered the Lord and said, "I know that you can do everything, and that no thought can be withholden from thee. Who is he that hideth counsel without knowledge? Therefore have I uttered that I understood not, things too wonderful for me which I knew not. Hear, I beseech thee, and I will speak. I will demand of thee, and declare thou unto me. I have heard of thee by the hearing of the ear, but now mine eye seeth thee. Wherefore I abhor myself, and repent in dust and ashes."
We already knew that. You told us about it, from the very beginning.
Yeah.
That he hates himself. He wants to die.
And it was
And
so.
now we are at the epilogue.
Yes. And it was so, that after the Lord had spoken these words unto Job, the Lord said unto Eliphaz the Temanite,
So he's back.
"My wrath is kindled against thee and against thy two friends, for ye have not spoken of me the thing that is right, as my servant Job hath."
So I am okay. So this is so weird. Okay, First of all, why is it specifically Eliphaz that is being spoken to?
Yes, fuck Eliphaz.
Wait,
Okay.
what did he do?
Because fuck Eliphaz.
He was just telling Job, hey, curse God and die, all that sort of stuff, wasn't he?
No, that was Job's wife.
Oh, okay. So what was Eliphaz?
Eliphaz was one of the friends trying to say that Job had done something wrong and deserved what happened.
So, what's so why is God so hectic about that?
The whole point of the book of Job is A, that it's okay to be angry with God. At least this is a traditional Jewish interpretation. B, that despite everything in the law, bad things do happen to good people, even when they have not done anything to deserve it. And C, it is also not wrong to place God on trial. And in fact, it was after the Holocaust, for example, several rabbis literally did place God on trial and found him guilty.
That's hilarious. So it's interesting that you say that, because from God's speeches, I guess, he is kind of, maybe in a way saying, don't put me on trial, because he's like, you don't understand. You are just a simple human. You don't get it.
Well, he caveats at the end, and he says that what Job had spoken was right.
Well, yeah, but that's specifically.
It's not that you're not allowed to put God on trial. It's basically saying that to keep in mind that He is God, and that there are things that you will not understand about why things happen. It's not to put God on trial, though.
But he says that specifically that Job was right. I'm guessing about
Where?
how Job just answered.
Well, it has to be about Job's answer because he hasn't really said that much else. I find it strange.
Where?
So in the beginning of 42, so 42 1 through 6, that part, the way I was understanding it is that when God says that Job was right, he was right in saying the stuff in 42 1 through 6.
Yeah. So we're so why don't you keep? I guess you're finished verse 7. Why don't you kill?
Yeah. Therefore take unto you now 7 bullocks and 7 rams, and go to my servant Job, and offer up for yourselves a burnt offering, and my servant Job shall pray for you. For him will I accept, lest I deal with you after your folly, in that ye have not spoken of me the thing which is right, like my servant Job. So Eliphaz...
Hey. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So Eliphaz the Temanite, and Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite went and did according to the Lord commanded them. The Lord also accepted Job.
And also, to be clear, he could have done this a while ago.
Yes. And the Lord turned the captivity of Job when he prayed for his friends. Also the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. Yep. Then came there unto him all his brethren and all his sisters, and all they that had been of his acquaintance before, and did eat bread with him in his house, and they bemoaned him and comforted him over all the evil that the Lord had brought upon him. Every man also gave him a piece of money, and everyone an earring of gold. So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning. For he had 14,000 sheep and 6,000 camels and 1,000 yoke of oxen and 1,000 she-asses. He also had 7 sons and 3 daughters. And he... What's that? Or is that just a background noise? Background noise. Oh. And he called the name of the first Jemima, and the name of the second Keziah, and the name of the third Karen Hapuk. And in all the land were no woman found so fair as the daughters of Job. And their father gave them inheritance among their brethren. That breaks God's law, right? And after this lived Job 140 years, which breaks the rules, and saw his sons and his sons' sons, even 4 generations. So Job died, being old and full of days. And that is the end of the book of Job.
Okay, so I'm sure there's a...
It's also, there's a few, okay. We're going to go to the Septuagint in a second. But one thing I want to note is that it's actually interesting that Job's daughters are the only children of his ever named.
Yeah.
And it's also interesting that they also get inheritances like their brothers. It's interesting because the author of Job actually has one of the more progressive views towards women.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, this I know that in puritanical thought, this is an example. They say, if you're righteous, then God will bless you with earthly riches. If you're poor, it's because you're not godly, right? And that's one of their big things is that wicked and the righteous are wealthy.
Yeah, I find it really strange here that, well, for one thing, the daughters get an inheritance because that's breaking the rules.
Well, remember, Zelophehad's daughters got an inheritance.
It's a little different.
I mean, yeah, because he didn't have any sons to give it to. But
yeah, but also because Job outlives the time span that God said was the maximum time span that
Sure.
someone would live. So if you're reading this narratively from Genesis on through up till this point, there is a contradiction.
Very easy.
Yes. Chris, you're silent.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Chris.
You're muted.
Muted.
You're muted.
Fuck. Okay, here we have the Septuagint's ending for Job.
Okay.
So starting with verse 10, and the Lord prospered Job, and when he prayed also for his friends, he forgave them their sin. And the Lord gave Job twice as much, even double of what he had before. And all his brethren and his sisters heard all that had happened to him, and they came to him, and so did all that had known him from the first day. And they ate and drank with him, and comforted him, and wondered at all that the Lord had brought upon him. And each one gave him a lamb and 4 drachms weight of gold, even of unstamped gold. And the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than the beginning. And his cattle were 14,000 sheep. His cattle were 14,000 sheep. And his cattle were 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 yoke of oxen, and 1,000 she-asses of the pastures. And there were born to him 7 sons and 3 daughters. He called the first Day, and the second Kezia, and the third Amalthea's horn. That's how Septuagint does it, apparently. And there were not found, in comparison with his daughters of Job, fairer women than they in all the world. And their father gave them an inheritance among their brethren. And Job lived after his affliction 170 years, and all the years he lived were 240. And Job saw his sons and his sons' sons, the 4th generation. And Job died an old man full of his days, and it is written that he will rise again with those whom the Lord raises up. This man is described in the Syriac book as living in the land of Alsis, on the borders of Idumea and Arabia, and his name before was Jobab. So this is linking to Jobab in Genesis.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. We remember Jobab.
And having taken an Arabian wife, he begot a son whose name was Enon. And he himself was the son of his father Zara, one of the sons of Esau, and of his mother Bosora, so that he was 5th from Abram. And these were the kings who reigned in Edom, which country he also ruled over. First, Balak, the son of Beor. The name of his city was Dinabah. But after Balak, Jobab, who is called Job, and after him Asom, who was governor out of the country of Taman. And after him Adad, the son of Barad, who destroyed Madiam in the land of Moab. And the name of his city was Gathaim. And his friends who came with him were Eliphaz of the children of Esau, king of the Temanites, Baldad, sovereign of the Sakians, and Zophar, king of the Manaans.
So they're all kings. Okay, great.
Yes.
Well, great.
So this links it in to the greater general history, or the genealogy.
It links it to Genesis, and then it also heavily links it to Arabia. The Manaans were Arabian groups, the Sakians were Arabian groups. Like, it seriously associates it with Arabia.
Excellent. Well, with that being said, why don't we get to final thoughts on Job, because that's...
Yeah. Also last week, because we forgot to tell everybody, we had 15 beholds.
15 beholds last week. That's right.
What? Yeah, most ever.
How many did we have this week?
Oh, today's behold.
Yeah.
Right. I'll put that up. It's 5.
Five beholds. All right. So I guess I'll start us off with closing thoughts on Job. It was kind of a trip. Lots. I mean, obviously, it was mostly a big back and forth, a big ass argument. I think God is still the douche in all this. He was wrong about how faithful Job would be, and when he saw that, he was like, he had to come down there and say something. But it kind of amounted to, you're an idiot.
Yeah, I don't
basically.
find God's argument to be very substantial
No,
at
me
all.
neither.
Like, he's
The whole-
basically like, well, you don't know because you're not me.
Well, actually, the whole point of the Book of Job is that it doesn't answer the problem of evil. It's the
Well, a
whole
lot
point.
of books don't answer the problem of evil. Yeah, Chris, you don't have video.
I think
right
he
now.
knows.
But part of the thing I think is that again, God is behaving, and the God of this book of Job is behaving like a jerk, and even when and I find it so interesting that he gets all honked off at the two guys saying, hey, maybe you were bad and that's why God's doing stuff, as if they were doing something wrong and evil, right? Is this book suggesting that to say bad things come to bad people is wrong and you should go and sacrifice a bunch of critters?
Well,
to
like
get right with God? I mean,
all those bits on like the animals and how they act viciously in nature and how they like God has no problem with that and they have no problem with that. I mean, it almost seems like it's suggesting that whatever knowledge that human beings have about morality from which they could judge God or anything else,
He could easily
is
be
false.
he could easily just be withholding some amount of knowledge from them.
Yeah. So on what grounds would someone be able to call God into a trial if he can just pull that answer out at any time that he wishes?
Sure.
You can't. He lost. The end.
He's
So
got-
I mean, it's again this notion, that in this final section where God is saying, you're not God, so what do you know? I'm not impressed.
Lots of background noise. Chris is going through some stuff.
I'm not impressed. I'm not with the God of this book.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. So, first thing that we need to take into account is the prologue where God is trying to figure out how faithful Job is not at all a part of the rest of the dialogue.
Sure.
So it doesn't. So we, in my opinion, we shouldn't really be interpreting the dialogue based on what happens there.
Okay.
That there's also, but then there's a problem. My argument is that it's not supposed to have a satisfying answer to the problem of evil. Because the whole point of this book is that good people are going to suffer, and we don't know why. And we just have to trust that God hopefully knows what's going on.
Sure. It's interesting that this book is so different in how it sees like moral responsibility. Not even moral responsibility, but I guess punishment. Because if we take a look at the theologies of the exiles, of the people who were exiled, for example, they were very convinced that they had done something wrong, and that's why they were exiled. And you see that throughout most of the Torah. And, well, it's very different. It's certainly a different theology.
Right. I find chapter 41 really confusing because it's cool that we get like this whole Leviathan spiel.
Sure.
Right? But couldn't that really be simplified down to something that doesn't even include Leviathan, where it's just saying, I'm great because I can do things that you can't? Isn't the whole point in him talking about Leviathan just to emphasize
How great he is?
How great he is. Like, yeah, I can conquer this thing that you couldn't possibly conquer.
Then no one could.
Yeah. So,
And then nothing could.
like, it's almost like extraneous to include the details.
Sure. I mean, I
that's actually been one of the primary arguments against the second speech of God being authentic. I tend to actually think that they're both authentic, though, and the reason I think that they're both authentic is that yes, while they're extraneous in a way, I think it's that they're pretty legitimate in their rebuttal, because all of those flow well from each other.
I mean, I did. I did see a note. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead. Finish off.
Yeah, and especially because he's also consistently from chapter 40 on talking about his primacy in conquering the seas and establishing the earth. I think that makes Leviathan actually rather essential to have, because in terms of his mythological speech, because Leviathan is literally conceptualized as a chaos dragon that is preventing the order of the system.
And you know, from all the stuff, especially in that chapter about all the animals and how they're just kind of part of the system. They're just doing their part. So you could see why he'd be not so happy about disruption of that.
Does that remind you of the Bhagavad
It
Gita?
does. It does, actually.
Yeah, it does.
Especially with how much I've been reading it for my paper.
Yeah. Well, have fun with all those moral quandaries that you're going to solve.
They'll be fine.
Well, you know, morality, you don't have to worry about morality.
I know, exactly.
If you're a serial killer, you were put here to be a serial killer.
So, Chris, did we get your closing thoughts on Job? I know you've probably had a million of them throughout the years, but
I've basically said what I need to say, so I'm good.
Fantastic.
Excellent. What about Landon?
I think you did.
So I'm not impressed by this, look at me God thing. I'm not impressed with this trial stuff that people this deity put Job through, nor the behavior of the deity there. I think that it's amazing that Job put up with all this stuff. But hey, that's Job's thing.
All right.
Well, if God was talking to you, maybe it'd be a little different. But
I mean, other than that, again, I think I'm trying to think of what's the message, and what is the overall message that this book of Job is doing. And
bad things happen to good people.
Said that it's all. I guess it's also okay to argue with God or to have a debate with God. Is that?
Yeah. This is actually, in Jewish tradition, this is actually a book that they commonly use, especially for people that are having troubles, like when they're having a really big struggle in their life and they feel like they want to say something out against God. There's a tradition where basically you can do that by putting yourself in the place of one of the characters and then speaking their speeches. And the book of Job is commonly used for that.
Well, with that being said...
Yeah, let's do some shilling quick. Patreon, and we have the Patreon Hangout coming up right after the show.
So if you hurry right now and donate enough money, you can hop into the Hangout.
Yeah, sure, why not?
Right now.
Yeah.
And you can also put enough, you can get one of these t-shirts, right? One of these cool t-shirts here.
Yes, those for the t-shirts. Those are $10 and up. You'll be put on the wheel, and every month we spin the wheel. Or you could just get them on Teespring. Yeah. Also, that's the other thing.
Every week they spin the wheel, and it always lands on Landon.
It does land on Landon quite a bit.
Not rigged.
Landon. His name has land in it.
Ooh,
Hashtag Illuminati confirmed.
And there's also our Amazon wish list if you're interested in
Yes.
getting us anything that we can cover in the future.
Yeah. Amazon wish list.
I highly recommend getting them books on the wish list, because if you do that, you do yourself a favor, because they actually read the books and then do these wonderful video commentary where you learn all kinds of interesting scholarly stuff because only you can prevent bad scholarship.
Yeah.
The teacher says.
Better take his word for it.
Like, for example, I got Lawrence a copy of The Struggle of Yahweh and El for Hosea's Israel. And so I expect an edit to his Golden Calf video soon.
I will. I'll read it and get back to you on that. Although, God, editing that thing took a fucking while. I'm not gonna fucking. Maybe I'll make a note or something, but I'm not gonna re-fucking make the video. Anyways, Facebook, Twitter, we're on there. Is anything else? Are we missing? Sherm Journal.
Hopefully
Go
some
check
point
out
you
Sherm
could,
Journal.
you could put the podcast up on a podcast network near you.
Yes, I'm thinking not iTunes, but something else. I know that there are other ones.
Yeah, we can figure something out.
Yeah.
But with all that being said, we will see you
On Friday.
Yes. We're
you
seeing you
also
for
next
the
Sunday, though.
Friday Apocryphal Podcast at 1 p.m. Central Time, 13 for all you military and science folks out there. And if we don't catch you on Friday,
Then we will see you next Sunday.